Coming up on today's episode of Real Talk Rentals, do you want to know the lessons you can learn from property management? We're going to tell you. Welcome back to Real Talk Rentals, a podcast brought to you by OnQ Property Management. We're here to give you all the tips, secrets, and behind-the-scenes looks at owning an investment property. I'm Ben, I'm your host, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Eric Dixon, the go-to expert on all things rental property and real estate. I say that every episode. I might have to change it up at some point, but
I'm not that cool, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I like it. You're the go-to. So this episode, we had a lot of fun putting this together when we were writing out the script, but we're going to talk about lessons we've learned from property management, all sides of it, whether it's owning a property, renting a property, or working here. So Eric, I'm going to kick this off to you. First question. You've kind of done everything, but let's go back in time. You're just an owner. You're not working in property management. What did you learn signing up with a property management versus self-managing?
Yeah. And I mean, it has been kind of a journey, so stepping back, like you said, you go back to like 2007, 2008, when I got my real estate license, and I was just doing sales and for a few years. And I remember specifically like my clients, I'd sell them a rental, and then they would, and this is during the bottom of the bottom, we're selling houses for $50,000, $100,000. A $200,000 or $300,000 house was a Taj Mahal, man. It was crazy.
Yeah.
You could get, but as far as a rental, and I would drop off the keys at a property manager and just walk away. I'm like, hey, by the way, I just sold this dude a house, Ben. Here you go. Boom. And I would just leave. And then just what it has become over time is crazy. So I was just doing sales for 2 or 3 years. And then in 2011, my now business partner and the founder of OnQ, he kind of recruited me and said, hey, I know you're just a sales guy, but just come on over, kind of learn the ropes of property management. You could sign up our clients with our service, and then you can still do real estate. And I was like, this is the best of both worlds, man.
Yeah,
like I can still do the sales that I'm passionate about in the real estate industry, buyers, sellers, negotiating, that sort of stuff. But then I can kind of lean into the property management for some supplemental income. Honestly, at first I saw it as a side hustle. That's like, oh, I can hang my license there, kind of make $500, $1,000, whatever extra a month, and then I can, be on my way. And then over time, I bought a house, and then we moved, and that turned into a rental. Then I bought a fourplex, and I'm kind of in property management, selling homes, and I quickly realized a lot of things that I wanted to do with real estate. I wanted to invest in rentals, and eventually I didn't want to manage them, but I kept it real close to the chest because I didn't even quite trust the process, to begin with OnQ or property management in general. So the things I've learned, I guess, kind of going back to your original question, kind of set that base there, is that you have to trust the process and realize it's an investment and it's long-term. So It's like, this is not get rich quick. This is not look at on Instagram and stuff, people flipping houses and making $100,000 a house, and you're going to retire in 5 years. It's like, reality is for most people that it's this slow growing investment that you nurture and you hopefully give to a property manager. And that's kind of what I learned. It took me way too long. Like, it took me 4 or 5 years before I completely assigned it to a property manager here at our office. And said, manage my property. Right. It cost me so much time and money. And I guess that's my biggest takeaway is, like, I spent the money on the property to buy it, but I was spending so much time managing it myself that it's like, this is not worth it. Like, I could just pay. And I was in the office with everybody, and it still wasn't worth it. I thought, and then I've quickly realized, you fast forward another 5 years, and I'm like, I wouldn't go back to self-managing ever. Like, you do need, there's so many, tangible benefits, to having a property manager do it. Yeah.
I like how you said the long-term play, right? That it's not a get rich quick kind of thing. And I think that plays into so many people, they want to self-manage because they're like, well, I'm only going to manage for a year and then I'm rolling in the dough, and it's like, do you want to be, dealing with maintenance calls for the next 15 years, or whatever?
No, and the reality is, like, hopefully if you have a debt service on the house, maybe you make a few $100 a month.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that $300 a month extra you're making, you're going to put that back into the house.
Absolutely.
The AC is going to go out. The water heater is going to need replaced. You're going to need an appliance. You're going to need to recarpet the rooms when the tenant moves out. You're going to have to touch up paint. You're going to have to do these things. That fluff that you're making per month is not, gravy that you just spend. Because then something comes up. So it's not, you're literally not getting rich quick. But what is happening is the tenant's paying off your mortgage. You have great tax benefits that even I learned over time. 5 years later, I'm like, oh man, that really helped on my taxes 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
Depreciation and different things. So a lot of that, I just learned over time how things worked. And 2, 3, 5 years down the road, it's like, oh, that's how move-ins work. Oh, that's how when they move out, it does cost money. Like a tenant just doesn't move out and a new tenant moves in and everything's hunky-dory. It's like, no, you have to get the house ready. Some of the stuff you can charge to the tenant, but most of the stuff is out of pocket. Get the house ready. I've got to pay the leasing fees or whatever the costs are to land a new tenant.
Right.
And there might be a few weeks of vacancy, so there's like, it hurts. But after you've done it over and over and over, you kind of learn to know what's coming up. So,
yeah. All right. So then let's jump to that point you mentioned. You're now working in property management, right? So on that side of it is a guy who's, selling the services and things like that. What do you think you learned throughout that period of time about property management in general? Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing I learned is that property management is not just, collecting rent. Because I think that's everyone's perception is that property managers just bog down the process. They're just a middleman and they just collect the rent and charge a fee or something, And I'm sure that there are cases that is reality, and that's why that's the stigma, right? But really, a good property management company should not just be collecting the rent, charging a fee for it, and making it harder than it is. It should be a very positive, experience. Yeah. So what I've learned is that it's an essential service for landlords. Like whether they know it now or not, that picture perfect landlord situation and resident situation is not the case most of the time. Like, I would love to rent a house and I'm like, do you know what? I want to rent from a self-manager, husband, wife, owner, come up, make me cookies, give me the keys. I walk into this beautiful house. It's like, if you have that, you are the exception and you just need to run with that as long as possible. Yeah. Because that's not reality.
Drop off the keys and say, well, just let me know when you guys are ready to move out.
Yeah. It's like,
I'm sure nothing will go wrong ever.
And then you get your deposit check when you're handing keys, it's just, that's not how it works, and so I've just learned that property management is a service business, just like a pest control company or a pool service or these different type of services that owners, they pay for it and they deserve and are expecting good communication and, high-end service. And so I did not know that when I was selling real estate agents, you kind of stick out your chest and you go, I am above property managers. Yeah. Property managers are below me and they it's kind of an ongoing joke and it's not funny, but I can say it because I've been a salesperson and now in property management is, it's like they're the real estate agents that couldn't make it. And that could not be farther from the truth. Right. It's like, no, it's just sales is literally, it's commission only sales. Yeah. Heavy sales skills. You have to be able to grind and be okay with zero 1 month and $20,000 one month and zero or whatever it is. Whereas property management, it's a career path, and it's like you can make great money, you can offer great service, and you can be part of a community and an employer and a team. That's not what selling real estate's all about. So they're just so apples and oranges. And I think there used to be a worse stigma. And now it's actually, we're attracting a ton of real estate agents that want to be property managers because they realize I can make just as much money and I could be part of a team and an atmosphere and I can have an office and benefits and all this stuff. Yeah. So I thought it was totally different than that. So
I heard one of our sales guys say once that a real estate agent is like the guy who sells you your brand new car, right? Like it's the car sales guy. Yeah. But after that, then what you need is a mechanic and you need someone to change the oil.
To manage it. Yeah. Yeah. Maintain it. Yeah.
And even the best car, things are going to happen. You're going to have checkups and do these things.
Yeah.
And he's like, you wouldn't call your sales guy and say, hey, I got to change the oil. Can you come over and do this? You know, it is a whole different skill set.
It is a whole different ballgame. And it's like, and both of them are essential, right? Somebody's got to help you buy the car or buy the house or sell the house or whatever. And we offer those services as well. Like, and some people see them as competing services. They are complementary. I think it's just over the years, at least the brokerage I started at, you just referred it out and you didn't think twice about property management and you just got back to grinding and selling. Right. And I think part of my perception was there's an individual, he's kind of a one-man show, two-man show property management company that I would refer to. I'd literally call him up and say, hey man, I'm coming over with keys. Are you home? At his house. And he would just come out and he's just like trashed. He's got washer dryer on the trailer. He's, hey man, I'm so busy. It's so hot. And I'm just like, oh, I do not want to be a property manager. Like if that's what property management is, Yeah. But I think his take on, he did a lot of maintenance. He was a one-man show and did everything, right? And then I'd give him a fourplex. And for him, he's like, man, I've got tons of opportunity there. And then when it was ready to sell, he'd refer it back to me, and I would sell. And so it kind of worked, but that was my perception. And it was just so different than what property management is for us today.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've said it before, but I think a lot of people, I know for sure me, when I started here, I was like, why do all these people work here just to collect rent?
Well, yeah.
Like I thought that was it, and then it's like, there's so many more facets to it.
You're like, you must be knocking on every door and just
you personally, delivering because there's just too many people in this office. But there's so much more that goes into it. So on the opposite side of that, tenants, residents, people who rent from a property management company, what do you think they get out of it? What are they learning, hopefully, or how is that experience benefiting them?
Yeah. So and again, this is another one of those things that watching from the outside. So I'm a landlord and own a property management company. I'm in real estate. I'm on that side of the fence. But watching our clients, the tenants are our clients as well, and they deserve great service. They demand it, and they should. They demand good service. If I'm paying fees, if I'm paying rent to you guys, if you are my go-to, you better answer the phone. You better be available when you say you're available. That sort of thing. So, I think there's certain things that as an industry, I think tenants deserve, and it's good service, quality communication, timely responses, and that sort of stuff. But as far as there are a lot of residents who prefer property managers over a self-manager because they've gone through experiences that prove otherwise, that are like, yeah, it was great self-managing until I text the owner and he just ignores me. And I don't know where he lives. They don't have an office. He blocks my number. Yeah. But then when the first rolls around, man, he's on my doorstep to collect rent, or, so many of our residents, they prefer managers because there's a business, there's reviews online, there's
hours of operation.
Yeah, there's hours of operation. There's actually a physical brick and mortar. There's an agency, a state agency that supervises and licenses us. Sure. A self-manager does not have to be licensed. They could be a criminal. You could be renting from an owner. Yeah, they own the house, but did you know they have a past that you have nothing. Yeah. You don't know about them, and they're standing at your doorstep. There are just these extreme examples that are reality. And so I think it's fair to say that residents deserve just as high level services as our owners that hire us initially. Yeah. And so we try and provide things like the portals. We have smart lockers out front, just like those Amazon parcel lockers, where they can access their keys, drop off keys, pay rent 24/7 in a safe, secure room.
It shocks me how many people use it at like 3 a.m. Yeah. We'll get a ding from the camera and I'll look and be like, dude, a guy picked up his keys last night at 3:30 a.m. And that's obviously just what worked best for him.
Yeah. And some of them work days. They're sleeping. They work nights, or they... dude, if it's in the summertime and it's 115 during the day, they move at midnight. And so, absolutely. So it is a really cool. Those are the types of things that, do we need a locker system? Invest in that and the technology in order to attract owner clients? No, our owners don't even know about it. Most of them, some of them do with the new marketing and stuff, but we do it because we want the resident experience to be just as good, right? So It's like, hey, if we're going to invest in the owners' portals, we need to invest in the tenants' portals and the residents' portals. I keep on saying tenant. we're trying, the new word is resident. And I really think it has a better connotation. I think it's like a new up and coming, like, no, they are, I do, unfortunately, the word tenant, I think even on the news, it's like this bad word or something.
Yeah, it's like, become kind of like, has like kind of a derogative
connotation.
Yeah,
it's
which it should not. Yeah, it's just a straightforward word. But when you hear those two together, tenant and resident, resident does just sound like, I mean, I'm a guy who does marketing all day, and it's like, resident's a better word, but it is hard to unlearn that, where it's like, we're not saying tenant because we're looking down on them.
Well, I think to me, it's like the tenant, yes, they rent the house and it's just they're renting it. It's not theirs. Resident, to me, they reside in the home. It is their home, right? It's their
100%.
It is there. So anyway, I mean, I'm on a tangent, but I just caught myself saying tenant, resident.
Yeah.
And listeners are probably like, which one is it? Or maybe is there a difference?
Yeah.
But
technically the same thing. I think, too, we talk about a lot, there is a perception, I think, for residents saying, oh, you're just on the side of the owner. And they don't realize that that's not our job, to just be on the side of the owner. Like, our job is to protect them as well. And there are so many occasions where we're telling an owner, like, no, you can't do that.
You can't do that. Yeah. Like, there is the tenant, the kind of the handbook or the law, the statutes that are existing around tenants and landlords is the Tenant Landlord Act. It's two-sided. It protects both parties. And we have a fiduciary responsibility to both. We can't say, hey, the owner hired us. Sorry, hit the road. This is what it is. It's like, no, there's laws. And part of our job is to keep the owner in line and keep the tenant in line.
Yeah.
And make sure that those lines aren't crossed. And I think so that's another benefit is, if you're considering renting, highly consider renting from a property management company because they are held to higher standards.
Yeah.
And if they're not, upholding to those standards, you can go after them. You can get out of your lease. You can do different things. Yeah. There's things to protect you.
Well, and we've said this so many times, but it bears repeating is that, there's honest mistakes. A landlord might be, accidentally doing something illegal, when it according to fair housing or something, you can't bring an ESA in here or whatever. Yeah. And a property management company, it's our job to know, now, wait a second, that actually they're protected from this, and it's not to, it's not that anybody's trying to be malicious to anybody else. It's that, we're the experts and our job is to be on the side of everyone,
Well, you want them to have that security and that mindset of like, my property manager has my back. Yeah, the landlord owns the home. I know that, but they have my back, And so we try and just go out of our way to offer other benefits and different things. Some others off the top of my head are credit reporting.
Huge.
Like is a new big one. It's a big new one for us.
Yeah.
Is that when you pay your rent on time, you'll have a positive impact on your credit score versus before it was, we only report when it's negative.
Which I think is really the case with a lot of places.
That's the standard.
Yeah. But rent is such a huge bill that you're paying every month to get the positive.
Well, and you think about it, it's kind of unfair. The whole credit system is a whole separate topic, but it's kind of like you have to get in debt to get a good score, and then you need to
pay that debt off.
But you got to pay it off, or else it's going to go down. It's like, what's the balance? And then if you rent and you're not getting positive scores, it's like, how am I supposed to build towards my goal of home ownership if that's my goal, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe your goal is not a home ownership, but I want good credit so I can get a good car loan or a good student loan or whatever. So the only other thing I made a note of that I thought was specifically important is when you use a property manager as your landlord, your source of your rental, then the property manager is very likely vetting the vendors that are going to go into your home. So you think about that, and it's like some of the self-managers are like, oh yeah, the plumbing's broke. I'm going to send my uncle over. He's a retired plumber.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's great. Maybe he is a retired plumber, but how do I know that they've been vetted, background checked?
Yeah.
They have
They could be a retired plumber who just got out of jail.
That's right. And I feel like I'm kind of saying extremes, but I'm also not. Like the vendors we use that have, some of them have commercial vehicles. They have CDLs. That means they don't have bad driving history.
Yeah.
That means they're not convicted felons recently. They are vetted in a certain way, not only for craftsmanship and safety and stuff like that, but also for quality of work and punctuality and that sort of stuff. So you should be getting a higher quality maintenance, response time and quality when you go through a property manager.
And it's a peace of mind, we're joking about the example, but it's true of like somebody who lives by themselves, right? And a vendor's coming into their home, at least if they know it's through a property management company that is a vetted, licensed vendor. It's not like the landlord just found someone on Craigslist and gave him your address and said,
it's like
they live by themselves, so stop by anytime, they'll be there. You know,
house is vacant, the door's open.
Yeah,
no, but it's like if they show up in a marked vehicle with a marked shirt and an ID badge or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, I'm the plumber to fix your leak," versus like, "Hey, I'm so and so's uncle. I'm a plumber in a green Chevy truck." You're like,
yeah.
Do you have any tools, dude? Like, like, I don't know. I'm telling you, it can get crazy. It reminds me of like, I think we've talked about it when you rent in like an Airbnb or a hotel.
Yeah.
They don't do a background check on you. They don't do criminal background check on you. Nothing. You could just like show up and then next door unit could be anybody.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it kind of freaks me out.
Yeah.
I just, that came to mind.
All right. So just for fun, let's wrap this up with talking about kind of the reverse of all this, working in property management. What has that taught you that applies outside of management, to the world in general, like what skills do you think or life lessons have you learned?
Yeah. So Taylor, he's the founder again. And I was lucky enough for him to recruit me over and then partner with him later on and be a part of this. And he's really drilled down, especially at our annual meetings and really helping our employees understand, like, we are not just collecting rent and facilitating maintenance. Like, these are people's homes, right? Like, this is there's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Is like, you need food, water, oxygen to live. Right above those three is shelter. So it's like, that is a basic human need. Like it's a lot of people are fighting that it's a human right? To have housing, right? So it really is something that's like, some of them are big, nice, beautiful homes. Some of them are extravagant. Some of them aren't, but all of the homes we manage are somebody's home. Yeah. And so it is kind of cool that it's like, hey, we are providing housing for people. We are helping investors, manage their investment. We are helping, a lot of residents on their path towards home ownership. We are doing a lot of cool things in these people's lives. And then it just so happens that the day-to-day is real busy and real crazy and a lot can happen and there's a lot of feelings and emotions, but the underlying reason we exist is really cool. It's like you provide housing for people. Like it's actually really cool. So I think that that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. I've also learned as an investor side of it is I've had to practice what we preach. Like even on this podcast, the stuff we say, and then I'll go list my rental and I'm like, you know what? Start a little high. And then I'm like, wait, we just told everybody market it at market rate. And then my thing didn't rent until I lowered it and then I rented. Like I've learned over and over, like you just have to practice what we preach. And property management is not this crazy, it's not rocket science. It's basic housing and basic market stuff. So
we even mentioned this yesterday when we put it together, but like it's probably the oldest profession, right? Like you go back to like the Bible and there's always a discussion about somebody owns the inn or the home and they got to pay, their tax or their rent or whatever. And I think it's so cool. Like before I started working here, I had the perception it was just collecting rent, but I even with all the other facets to it, as I learned, I couldn't imagine that there'd be innovation, that it would still be changing, right? It's just the same, right? They've been doing it since then. It's got to be the same.
It's almost like sometimes we make it harder than it is. Like you say that and you're like, dude, they did it back then. They probably like had a friggin' like etching it in a stone, dude. You paid, but you're right. It's one of the oldest, like simplest things is somebody owns something and you want to use it or make it yours. And you pay them for that service or whatever it is. And it's an exchange of value for money or whatever it is. I mean, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
It's been around forever.
And it's still evolving, like I think of self-showings, which have come up in the last few years, 3D tours, our locker system that we talked about. Like these are things that, a few years ago didn't exist.
Every single day we get applications that walked through a 3D tour online. They never went to the house. They applied, they paid their deposit, and they're moving in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And they have not left their couch.
Yeah.
You know,
crazy.
and it's like, that is crazy, you know? And so, and then there are some that have gone super old school. They're like, they walk into the office and sit down at a computer and do the application and give us a check and do, you know, it's like some of it, it's just always evolving, you know?
Yeah.
So that is super interesting.
All right. Well, that is it for us this time. Be sure to follow the podcast wherever you listen and leave us a 5-star review if you can. It really helps out. And we will see you guys next time.